Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the enemy fleet move closer to Earth. The alien ships looked like giant metal spiders with long arms reaching out in all directions. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Jake had never seen so many enemy ships in one place before. His own fleet was much smaller. Only 47 human ships remained from what used to be a force of 300. Most of his friends were already dead. Most of Earth's defenders were gone. This was probably the last battle humanity would ever fight. The communication system made a loud beep. A voice came through the speakers. It was Admiral Kate Sullivan from the command ship. "All ships, this is command. We have reports that the alien queen is on the big ship in the center of their fleet, the one that looks like a giant triangle. If we can destroy that ship, we might have a chance." Jake looked through his viewing screen at the huge triangle ship. It was 10 times bigger than his own vessel. Black metal covered its surface, and strange blue lights moved along its sides. He knew that ship carried thousands of alien soldiers, and enough weapons to destroy a planet. "Captain Morrison," said his second officer, Lieutenant Ryan Cooper. "The enemy ships are getting into attack position. What are your orders?" Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was young and scared, but they were ready to fight. Most of them had joined the Space Force only 2 years ago when the war started. They had never expected to be humanity's last hope. "All weapons ready," Jake said into his communication device. "All ships prepare for attack. We go straight for the Queen's ship. No stopping, no turning back." The alien fleet opened fire first. Bright red energy beams shot across space like deadly lightning. The beams hit 3 human ships immediately. Jake watched the ships explode in balls of fire and metal. More friends were gone. "Return fire!" Jake shouted. "All weapons! Fire everything!" "We have!" The human ships shot back with blue energy weapons and missiles. Some of the alien ships took damage, but not enough. There were too many of them. Jake's ship, the Liberty, shook as enemy fire hit its shields. The lights on the bridge went out, for a moment, then came back on. Warning alarms rang everywhere. "Captain, our shields are down to 30%, Ryan reported. "The engines are damaged. We're losing power." More human ships exploded around them. Jake counted only 23 ships left. Then 20. Then 15. The alien fleet was winning easily. "Sir," said the weapons officer, a young woman named Kelly Davis, "we don't have enough firepower to get through their defenses. The Queen's ship is too well protected." Jake watched. Another group of human ships die in explosions of light and metal. Only 12 ships remained now. In a few more minutes, they would all be gone. Earth would be defenseless. That was when Jake made his decision. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," he said into the communication system. "I'm going to ram the Queen's ship. When I do, use the explosion to cover your escape. Get back to Earth and warn them that the aliens are coming." "Jake, no." Admiral Sullivan's voice came through the speakers. "There has to be another way." "There is no other way," Jake said quietly. He turned to his crew. "Everyone get to the escape pods. That's an order." "Captain, we're staying with you," Ryan said. The other crew members nodded. "No, you're not," Jake said firmly. "Someone needs to tell Earth what happened here. Someone needs to tell them about the Queen and her fleet. Go, now!" His crew looked at him for a long moment. Then, one by one, they saluted and left the bridge. Jake heard the escape pods launching as they shot away from his ship. Jake was alone now. He turned his ship toward the giant triangle vessel and pushed the engines to maximum power. The Liberty moved forward, faster and faster, straight toward the Queen's ship. The alien ships tried to stop him. Energy beams hit the Liberty from all sides. The ship's armor melted away. The hull cracked and air started leaking out. But Jake kept flying forward. He could see the Queen's ship getting bigger and bigger in front of him. He could see the alien, weapons trying to destroy his ship before he reached them. But the Liberty was small and fast, and Jake was the best pilot in the human fleet. "This is for Earth," Jake said to himself as his ship flew into the alien vessel's main section. The explosion was enormous. The Liberty's reactor mixed with the alien ship's power source and created a ball of white energy that spread out in all directions. The Queen's ship broke apart into thousands of pieces. The explosion was so bright that it could be seen from Earth's surface. The energy wave from the explosion hit the other alien ships and damaged their systems. Some of them stopped working completely. Others spun out of control. But Jake's sacrifice was not enough to stop the invasion. There were still hundreds of alien ships left. They regrouped and continued toward Earth. On the Queen's command ship, or what was left of it, Queen Vexara picked herself up from the floor. She was hurt, but alive. The explosion had destroyed most of her ship, but the command section had survived. "Is the human pilot dead?" she asked her officers. "Yes, my queen. His ship was completely destroyed in the explosion. There is no way he could have survived." Queen Vexara smiled with her sharp teeth. "Good. That human was their greatest warrior. Now that he is dead, nothing can stop us from taking their planet." The queen looked out at the remaining human ships as they fled toward Earth. There were only 6 ships left. They could not possibly defend their world against her fleet. "Continue the attack," she ordered. "Today, we will conquer the humans and take what we need from them." The alien fleet moved toward Earth, leaving behind the wreckage of the great battle. They thought they had won. They thought the human resistance was broken. They thought Captain Jake Morrison was dead. They were wrong about that last part. 3 months had passed since the aliens conquered Earth. Lieutenant Amy Carter crawled through the dark tunnel beneath what used to be Peterson Air Force Base. The tunnel was narrow and cold, but it was safe from the alien patrols above ground. Amy reached the end of the tunnel and pushed open a heavy metal door. She entered a large underground room filled with computers, weapons, and supplies. This was the main base for the human resistance. About 50 people lived here, hiding from the alien occupation force. "Any news from the surface?" asked Sergeant Ben Taylor as Amy climbed down into the room. Ben was a big man with a thick beard. He had been a drill instructor before the war. "Bad news," Amy said, taking off her backpack. "The aliens have built 3 more processing centers in the past week. They're taking people faster now." The processing centers were the worst part of the alien occupation. The aliens would capture humans and take them to these large buildings. Nobody knew exactly what happened inside, but the people who went in never came out. Engineer Lisa Rodriguez looked up from the computer she was working on. "I've been monitoring their communications. They're planning something big, something they call the Great Harvest." "What does that mean?" asked Alex Thompson, the group's medic. Alex was young, maybe 25, but he had saved many lives since the resistance started. "I don't know," Lisa said, "but they seem very excited about it." Amy walked over to the main communication station. Every day she tried to contact other human groups around the world. Most of the time she heard nothing but static. Sometimes she heard alien voices speaking in their strange language. But today was different. A weak signal was coming through from somewhere far away. "This is Resistance Base Alpha," Amy spoke into the microphone. "Can anyone hear me?" The static cleared for a moment, and a man's voice came through. "This is Colony Ship New Hope. We're in the Centauri system. Amy, is that you?" Amy's heart jumped. "Commander Williams, you're alive?" "Barely," came the reply. "We have about 2,000 people here. The aliens attacked our colony last month, but we managed to escape. What's the situation on Earth?" Amy told him about the occupation, the processing centers, and the missing people. Commander Williams told her that the same thing was happening on other human worlds. The aliens were taking people everywhere. "We have to fight back," Amy said. "We can't just hide down here forever." "Agreed," Williams said. "But we need to know what they're doing with our people first. Can you get inside one of those processing centers?" Amy looked around the room at her small group of fighters. They had some weapons and explosives, but not much. An attack on a processing center would be extremely dangerous. "We can try," she said, "but we'll need help." "I wish we could send you reinforcements," Williams said, "but our ship is badly damaged. It will take months to repair." After the communication ended, Amy called a meeting with her team leaders. They gathered around a table covered with maps of the city above them. "We need to hit the main processing center," Amy said, pointing to a large building on the map. "It's heavily guarded, but it's our best chance to find out what the aliens are really doing." "That's suicide," said Ben. "They have at least 100 guards around that place, plus those flying patrol ships." "Maybe," Amy said, "but we can't just sit here while they take our people. My sister was captured last week. Your brother was taken 2 days ago. How many more are we going to lose?" The room was quiet for a moment. Everyone had lost family or friends to the alien processing centers. "What's the plan?" asked Lisa. Amy spread out a detailed map of the processing center. The building has a weak point on the east side where they bring in supplies. If we can create a distraction on the west side, we might be able to get a small team inside through the supply. Entrance. What kind of distraction? Asked Alex. Explosives, Ben said with a grim smile. I've been saving some special surprises for the right moment. They spent the next 2 hours planning the attack. It would be dangerous, probably deadly, but they had to try. The resistance had been hiding for 3 months while the aliens did whatever they wanted with captured humans. That night, Amy couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her sister Jenny, who had been captured while trying to find food for her children. Amy didn't even know if Jenny was still alive. The next morning, Amy's team prepared for the mission. They had 12 fighters, enough, explosives to blow a hole in a mountain, and weapons that had been designed to fight other humans, not aliens. Remember, Amy told her team as they prepared to leave the tunnel. We go in fast. We get the information we need, and we get out. No unnecessary risks. But as they climbed toward the surface, Amy knew that the entire mission was an unnecessary risk. They were about to attack the most heavily defended alien facility in the city with a handful of fighters and some old weapons. Still, they had to try. The people being taken to the processing centers were counting on them. The human race was counting on them. Amy opened the tunnel exit and looked out at the city above. Alien ships flew between the buildings like metal birds. The processing center stood in the distance, a dark tower surrounded by enemy soldiers. Let's go save our people, Amy said, and led her team into the dangerous world above. What Amy and her fighters didn't know was that inside the main processing center, something terrible was happening. The aliens weren't just capturing humans for slavery or food. They were taking something from inside human bodies, something they needed to save their own dying race. And in a few hours, Amy would discover that some humans who had been captured were still alive, hidden in a secret part of the building where the aliens conducted their most important experiments. One of those prisoners had been thought dead for 3 months. His name was Jake Morrison. Amy and her team reached the processing center just as the sun was setting. The alien guards were changing shifts, which gave them a few minutes of confusion to work with. Ben placed his explosives on the west side of the building while Amy led a smaller team toward the supply entrance on the east side. The plan was simple, but Amy knew that simple plans often went wrong in real battles. Charges set, Ben whispered into his radio. Ready to blow on your signal. Amy crouched behind a pile of rubble near the supply door. She could see 2 alien guards standing next to the entrance. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their weapons looked like they could cut through metal. Remember, we need one of them alive for questioning, Amy whispered to her team. She raised her weapon and aimed at the first guard. Now, Ben. The explosion on the west side of the building was enormous. The blast shook the ground and sent pieces of alien metal flying through the air. Alarms started ringing everywhere. The 2 guards at the supply door turned toward the explosion. Amy and her team attacked quickly. They shot the first guard before he could react. The second guard tried to run, but Alex tackled him to the ground. Get him inside, Amy ordered. We don't have much time. They dragged the captured alien through the supply door and into the processing center. The inside of the building was dark and filled with strange machines that hummed with energy. Amy had expected to find rooms full of human prisoners, but the building seemed almost empty. There were only a few aliens running toward the explosion. Sight. Where are all the people? Lisa whispered. They moved deeper into the building, following signs that showed the way to different sections. Most of the signs were in the alien language, but some had human words translated underneath. They found a door marked Research Section, Authorized Personnel Only, in both languages. This might be it, Amy said. She tried the door, but it was locked with an alien security system. Lisa pulled out a small device she had built from salvaged alien technology. Give me 30 seconds. As Lisa worked on the lock, Amy heard something that made her blood freeze. It was a human voice, screaming in pain somewhere deeper in the building. Hurry, Amy whispered. The lock clicked open. They moved through the door and found themselves in a long hallway lined with cells. Most of the cells were empty, but some contained humans who looked sick and weak. My God, Alex whispered. What are they doing to these people? Amy looked into one of the cells and saw an old man lying on a metal table. Wires were attached to his head and arms. A machine next to the table was glowing with soft blue light. "They're taking something from them," Lisa said, looking at the alien machines. "Some kind of biological material." They heard footsteps coming from deeper in the building. Heavy boots on metal floors. "More guards?" Ben asked, raising his weapon. But the footsteps didn't sound like aliens. They sounded human. A door at the end of the hallway burst open. Through the smoke and sparks from damaged alien equipment, a figure emerged. It was a man wearing the torn remains of a Space Force uniform. He was carrying an alien weapon and had scars across his face. Amy's heart nearly stopped. She knew that face, even with the scars. "Jake Morrison?" she whispered. The man stopped and looked at her. It was definitely Jake Morrison, the pilot who had died 3 months ago when he crashed his ship into the alien Queen's vessel. "Lieutenant Carter," Jake said with a tired smile. "Good to see a friendly face." Amy's team stared in shock. They had all heard the story of Captain Morrison's heroic death. His sacrifice had become a legend among the resistance fighters. "But you're dead," Ben said. "We saw your ship explode." "I got out just before impact," Jake explained. "Emergency escape pod. But the aliens captured me before I could get away." Jake looked around at the cells full of human prisoners. "They've been keeping me here for experiments. Me and about 50 other people they think are special somehow." "Special how?" Amy asked. "I don't know exactly," Jake said. "But they keep taking blood samples and scanning our brains. They seem very interested in humans who have survived major battles or dangerous situations." More footsteps echoed through the building. This time, they definitely sounded like alien guards. "We need to get out of here," Amy said. "Can you walk?" "I can fight," Jake said, checking his weapon. "These aliens have been studying me for 3 months. Now it's time for me to study them back." Alien soldiers poured into the hallway from both directions. They were the same gray-skinned creatures with 4 arms, but these ones wore black armor and carried heavier weapons. "Take cover!" Amy shouted. The battle in the hallway was fierce but short. Jake fought like a man who had been waiting 3 months for revenge. His alien weapon cut through enemy armor like paper. Amy's team provided support while Alex helped the human prisoners out of their cells. "There are more prisoners in the lower levels," Jake said as they fought their way toward the exit. "At least 200 people." "We can't save them all today," Amy said, "but now we know where they are." They reached the supply door just as Ben's second set of explosives went off. The entire building shook, and pieces of the ceiling started falling down. "Time to go," Ben shouted. As they escaped into the night, Amy looked back at the burning processing center. They had rescued 12 people and learned the truth about what the aliens were doing, but there were still hundreds of humans trapped in other facilities around the world. "Jake," Amy said as they ran through the dark streets. "What else did you learn while you were in there?" Jake's expression was grim. "The aliens are dying, Amy. Their whole race is sick with some kind of disease. They think human blood might cure them." "Human blood?" "Not just blood," Jake said. "Something in our genetic code. Something they don't have." They reached the tunnel entrance that led back to the resistance base. As they climbed down into the safety of the underground, Amy realized that the war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The aliens weren't just trying to conquer humanity. They were trying to save themselves by destroying the human race. And now that Jake Morrison was alive and free, he had information that might help humanity fight back. But first, they would have to convince the other resistance groups that the legendary Captain Morrison had really returned from the dead. Word spread quickly through the resistance networks that Captain Jake Morrison was alive. Within 2 weeks, fighters from all over the region were traveling to Amy's base through dangerous alien-controlled territory. Jake spent his time training the new recruits and sharing what he had learned during his 3 months as a prisoner. The aliens had made a mistake by keeping him alive for so long. He now knew their weaknesses, their fear patterns, and most importantly, where their queen had established her command center. "She's taken over the old United Nations building in New York," Jake told the assembled resistance leaders. "The entire building has been converted into her palace. That's where she's coordinating the harvest operations across the planet." Amy looked at the intelligence reports spread across the table. "How many guards?" "Hundreds," Jake said. But they're overconfident. They think I'm dead, and they think humanity is broken. They're not expecting an attack on their queen. Ben studied a map of New York City. Even if we could get into the city, how do we get past all those defenses? Jake smiled for the first time since his return. I have a plan, but it's going to require every fighter we can gather, and some of us probably won't come back. Over the next month, resistance groups from across North America converged on the ruins of Philadelphia. They had weapons salvaged from destroyed military bases, vehicles repaired with alien technology, and most importantly, they had hope. The final assault force numbered 300 fighters. It was the largest gathering of human resistance since the invasion began. Jake stood before them on the night before the attack. Tomorrow we're going to do something the aliens think is impossible. We're going to march into their stronghold and face their queen. The fighters cheered, but Jake raised his hand for silence. Some of you won't come home, he continued, but every one of you will be remembered. Every one of you will be fighting for every human being who has been taken to those processing centers. The attack began at dawn. Resistance fighters hit alien outposts all along the route to New York, creating chaos and confusion. Meanwhile, Jake led the main force through abandoned subway tunnels that stretched beneath the city. They emerged from the subway system just 6 blocks from the United Nations building. The structure had been completely transformed by alien architecture. Black metal spires rose from the original building like twisted fingers reaching toward the sky. Remember the plan, Jake told his team leaders. Create as much noise as possible outside while I take a small group to the Queen's throne room. Amy grabbed his arm. Jake, you don't have to do this alone. Yes, I do, Jake said quietly. This is personal between me and her. The battle for the building was fierce. Alien defenders poured out of every entrance, their weapons filling the air with deadly energy beams. But the human fighters had spent months preparing for this moment. They fought with the fury of people who had lost everything. Jake and his small team fought their way through the main entrance while the larger battle raged outside. They climbed stairs and fought through corridors filled with alien technology and strange decorations. Finally, they reached the main assembly hall where the Queen had established her throne room. The doors were massive, covered with alien symbols. That seemed to move in the dim light. Jake kicked the doors open and stepped inside. The throne room was enormous, with a high ceiling supported by twisted metal columns. At the far end of the room, on a platform surrounded by glowing crystals, sat Queen Vexara. She was larger than the other aliens Jake had seen, with silver skin instead of gray and 6 arms instead of 4. Her eyes were black and reflected the light like mirrors. When she saw Jake walking toward her, those eyes went wide with terror. No, she whispered in accented English. It cannot be. You were meant to be dead. The Queen's voice rose to a scream. I watched your ship explode. I saw the fire consume you. You were meant to be dead. Jake continued walking forward, his weapon trained on the Queen. Around the throne room, alien guards raised their weapons but seemed frozen by their Queen's obvious fear. Your Majesty seems upset, Jake said calmly. Did you think killing me would be that easy? Queen Vexara stood up from her throne, all 6 of her arms trembling. You are the Ghost Walker, the one who returns from death. The legends said you would come. What legends? Jake asked, still walking forward. Ancient prophecies of our people, the Queen said, backing away from her throne. They speak of a warrior who cannot be killed, who brings doom to those who harm his species. Jake realized that his survival had become something more than just good luck in the minds of the aliens. Their culture had turned him into a supernatural figure, a harbinger of disaster. Tell me about the harvest, Jake demanded. Tell me what you're doing to my people. The Queen's fear was obvious, but she tried to maintain her dignity. We take only what we need to survive. Your species carries something in your blood that can cure the plague killing our race. So you're murdering humans to save aliens. We are taking samples, the Queen said defensively. Most of your people survive the process. Most? Jake's voice was cold. What about the ones who don't survive? The Queen said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, Jake said, now standing just a few feet from the throne. You're going to order all your forces to stop the harvest immediately. You're going to release every human prisoner, and then you're going to leave our planet. Queen Vexara laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Impossible. Without human genetic material, our race will die within a generation. We cannot leave empty-handed. Then you'll die, Jake said simply. Wait, the Queen said quickly. Perhaps we can reach an agreement, some arrangement that benefits both our species. Jake was surprised. He had expected the Queen to refuse any negotiation, but her fear of him seemed to be genuine, and it was making her desperate. What kind of arrangement? Partnership instead of conquest, the Queen said. We have technology that could help your people. Medical advances, space travel, energy systems. In exchange, some humans could volunteer to help us find a cure for our plague. Jake stared at her for a long moment. The offer was tempting, but he had seen too much suffering to trust any alien promises. You expect me to believe that you'll honor any agreement? He asked. I expect you to believe that I am terrified of you, the Queen said honestly. My people believe you are a spirit of vengeance. If I break faith with you, they will see it as bringing a curse upon our entire race. Jake looked around the throne room. The alien guards were still frozen, waiting to see what would happen between their queen and the human who had supposedly returned from the dead. This was not how he had expected the confrontation to go. He had come here to kill the queen and end the invasion. But now she was offering something he had never considered, a chance for both races to survive. Jake kept his weapon pointed at Queen Vexara while he considered her offer. The sounds of battle still echoed through the building as human fighters continued their assault on alien forces. You want partnership, Jake said finally, but your people have been harvesting humans for months. They've killed thousands of innocent people. Why should I trust you now? The Queen's 6 arms gestured nervously. Because I have seen what happens when your species fights back. You crashed your ship into my command vessel without hesitation. You survived 3 months of imprisonment and escaped. You walked into my throne room knowing you might die. She paused, her black eyes reflecting the strange light from the crystals around her throne. Your people do not surrender, she continued. They do not accept defeat. If this war continues, both our races will destroy each other. My species needs human genetic material to survive, but we cannot take it by force forever. Jake lowered his weapon slightly. What exactly are you proposing? Oh, ceasefire first, the Queen said. All harvest operations will stop immediately. All human prisoners will be released. Then we negotiate a formal agreement. And if the negotiations fail? The Queen was quiet for a moment. Then we return to war, and both our species face extinction. My people are dying from the plague, Captain Morrison. Without a cure, we have perhaps 50 years before our race ends completely. Jake heard footsteps behind him. Amy and Ben had fought their way to the throne room with a small group of resistance fighters. They kept their weapons ready as they spread out around the room. Jake, Amy called out, are you all right? I'm fine, Jake replied, not taking his eyes off the Queen. Her Majesty was just explaining how desperate her people are. Queen Vexara looked at the other humans with obvious fear. To her, Jake was the supernatural figure from her people's legends, but these other humans were also dangerous in their own way. They represented the resistance that had grown stronger even under alien occupation. What's your decision, Captain? The Queen asked. Jake made a choice that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. I accept your proposal for a ceasefire, he said, but I have conditions. The Queen nodded eagerly. Name them. First, all human prisoners are released within 24 hours. Second, you provide us with a full list of every processing center on the planet. Third, you share the real information about this plague that's killing your people. Agreed, the Queen said quickly. I'm not finished, Jake continued. Fourth, you establish communication with the human colonies in other star systems and offer them the same agreement. Fifth, any future cooperation between our species is voluntary on both sides. No more forced harvesting. The Queen hesitated on the last point. The voluntary cooperation? What if not enough humans agree to help us? Then you find another solution, Jake said firmly. Or you accept extinction. Those are your choices. Amy stepped forward. Jake, are you sure about this, after everything they've done? Jake turned to look at her. Amy, I've spent 3 months learning about their technology and their culture. They're not evil monsters. They're desperate people trying to save their race the only way they know how. By murdering our people, Ben said angrily. Yes, Jake agreed. And that was wrong. But now we have a chance to stop the killing on both sides. Queen Vexara spoke up. Captain Morrison, there is something else you should know. The information I give you about our plague, it will also help your people. The research we have conducted has led to advances in treating human diseases as well. Jake studied the Queen's face. She seemed to be telling the truth, but trust would have to be earned over time. Here's what's going to happen, Jake said. You order an immediate ceasefire. You release the prisoners. Then you and I are going to address both our peoples together, human resistance leaders and alien commanders. Everyone needs to hear this proposal. You would stand beside me and speak to your people? The Queen asked, surprised. If it stops the war and saves lives on both sides, yes. The next few hours were chaotic. Queen Vexara transmitted orders to every alien force on Earth. The harvest operations stopped immediately. Processing centers opened their doors and released thousands of human prisoners. Meanwhile, Jake contacted resistance groups around the world and the human colonies in other star systems. The news that Captain Morrison was alive and negotiating with the alien queen spread quickly through human communication networks. That evening, a strange scene took place in the ruins of Times Square. Human fighters and alien soldiers stood on opposite sides of a large open area while their leaders spoke from a platform in the center. 3 months ago, I was prepared to die to protect humanity, Jake told the mixed crowd. Today, I'm asking you to live for humanity's future. He explained the Queen's proposal, while Queen Vexara stood beside him. Some humans shouted in anger, and some aliens seemed confused by the idea of cooperation with their former enemies. This is not about forgiveness, Jake said to his own people. This is about survival. Both races need each other now. We can share knowledge, technology, and resources. Or we can keep fighting until there's nothing left of either civilization. Amy stood with the other resistance leaders. She was still not completely convinced, but she trusted Jake's judgment. What guarantees do we have that they'll keep their promises? She called out. Queen Vexara stepped forward to answer. You have the word of someone your people consider already dead, someone my people consider a spirit of vengeance. If I betray this agreement, Captain Morrison's legend will become even more powerful among my species. They will see me as cursed, Jake added. And you have the guarantee that human colonies throughout the galaxy are now watching this agreement. If the Queen breaks faith with Earth, she breaks faith with all humanity. Over the following weeks, the details of the agreement were worked out. Humans would volunteer to provide genetic samples for alien medical research. In exchange, aliens would share their advanced technology and help rebuild human cities damaged during the invasion. The first group of human volunteers surprised everyone. They were relatives of people who had died in the processing centers. They wanted to make sure that no more humans would be taken by force. The first alien medical facility built under the new agreement was staffed by both species working together. Human doctors learned alien healing techniques while alien researchers gained access to human genetic diversity. Jake found himself in a role he had never expected, ambassador between two worlds. He spent his time traveling between human settlements and alien research stations, making sure both sides followed the agreement. 6 months after the battle at the United Nations building, Jake stood in the same throne room where he had confronted Queen Vexara. But now it had been converted into a joint command center where humans and aliens coordinated their shared projects. Any regrets, Captain? The Queen asked him as they reviewed progress reports. Jake looked out through the window. At the city below, human construction crews worked alongside alien engineers to rebuild damaged buildings. Children from both species played in parks that had been battlefields just months before. No regrets, Jake said, but it's going to take a long time before either of our peoples truly trust each other. Time we now have, the Queen replied. Thanks to your impossible return from death. Jake smiled. He was no longer the ghost warrior of Alien.